Chemical bonds / interactions in biology. Before we start, it's crucial that you are familiar with these terms. I will define other key terms later in the presentation as well. First, an atom is the smallest unit of an element and displays the properties of the element. Next, electrons are negatively charged subatomic particles that are found in all atoms. The electron shell is the region surrounding the atom's nucleus where electrons can be found. An element is a substance that cannot be broken down into other substances or made up of only one type of atom. Finally, molecules are two or more atoms held together by chemical bonds. So, what exactly is a chemical bond? A chemical bond, in simple terms, is a connection between molecules forming a specific chemical. This connection occurs as a result of valence electrons being shared or transferred with the electrons in the outer shell of another atom. The goal of a chemical bond is to form an octet of electrons in the valence electron shell. Forming an octet of electrons mimics the electron configuration of noble gases. Noble gases are incredibly stable and very unreactive, so by mimicking their outer electron shell, other elements can inherit these qualities as well. There are various types of chemical bonds or interactions, and the ones I will be discussing today are covalent, ionic, and hydrogen bonds, as well as van der Waals interactions. First and foremost, covalent bonds are chemical bonds that form when atoms share electrons in the outer or valence shell. When the electrons are being shared, they create an electron pair. When looking at the visual aid provided, we see two fluorine atoms. And then, to the right of the arrow, we see a covalent bond formed, creating a difluorine molecule. This new molecule has an octet of electrons in the outer shell, fulfilling the goal of a chemical bond. The electron pair is highlighted in red where the two fluorine atoms are covalently bonded, sharing an electron. Covalent bonds are present in proteins, DNA, and carbohydrates, making them crucial in biological processes. There are two types of covalent bonds, one of which is a nonpolar covalent bond, and the other is a polar covalent bond. Polarity is determined by the electronegativity between two atoms in a chemical bond. Electronegativity is the strength an atom has to attract electrons in a chemical bond. So by looking at the atom's electronegativity, you can determine if the covalent bond is nonpolar or polar. The polarity of molecules can also impact how molecules react to other molecules. Covalent bonds are said to be nonpolar when there is a slight difference in electronegativity and the sharing of electrons is equal. You can quickly determine an element's electronegativity by looking at the periodic table. The farther right and up on the periodic table, the more electronegativity an element possesses. Likewise, covalent bonds are polar when electrons are not shared equally and the electronegativity is not similar. On the periodic table, oxygen is farther to the right than hydrogen. This means oxygen is more electronegative than hydrogen is. Because of this, we know that polar covalent bonds hold water molecules together. Next, ionic bonds are chemical bonds formed by ions attracted to each other by opposite charges. Atoms in ionic bonds lend an electron or electrons to another atom. These particles have gained or lost an electron and are now attracted to each other due to the difference in charge. The visual aid depicted portrays sodium and chloride atoms. The sodium atom transfers its one electron in its valence shell to the chloride atom, allowing both atoms to achieve the octet of electrons in the valence shell. This gives sodium a net charge of +1 and chloride a net charge of -1. Because electrons are negatively charged, sodium becomes more positive, and chloride becomes more negatively charged. The number of protons and electrons is the same in a neutrally charged atom, so the removal or addition of electrons disrupts the balance of the atom. These atoms, or newly formed ions, are attracted to each other due to their opposite charges, forming an ionic bond. Hydrogen bonds are weak chemical bonds between a hydrogen atom and a highly electronegative atom. For example, in a water molecule, there are 2 hydrogen atoms and 1 oxygen atom. The hydrogen atoms covalently bond to the oxygen to form an octet of electrons in the oxygen's valence shell. Hydrogen only needs 2 atoms in its valence shell to become more stable. Because oxygen is more electronegative, the hydrogen valence electrons orbit the oxygen atom. This results in the oxygen atom becoming slightly negative and the 2 hydrogen atoms becoming slightly positive. When other molecules surround water molecules, the slightly positive hydrogen atoms form a hydrogen bond between themselves, and the slightly negative oxygen atoms, as revealed in the visual aids provided. I placed 2 images in hopes that you can better visualize the formation of hydrogen bonds connecting molecules and how the molecules orient themselves to be opposite of each other. Hydrogen to oxygen and oxygen to hydrogen. Because hydrogen bonds are based on electrostatic attraction, they are far weaker than covalent and ionic bonds. To make up for being weak, hydrogen bonds form countless connections between molecules, significantly impacting the properties of a substance. The breaking and reforming of hydrogen bonds are what gives water its unique properties. Hydrogen bonds are also vital in the formation of DNA. It was precisely in 1948 that J.M. Gulland and J.M. Creeth correctly predicted that hydrogen bonds held together the nucleotide bases within the strands of DNA. While individually weak, the hydrogen bonds together allow the DNA to maintain its double helix structure. Covalent bonds are essential for the structural stability of DNA molecules as well. Covalent bonds hold together the sugar phosphate backbone of the DNA strand. This secures the sequence of nucleotides and allows it to remain intact. Van der Waals interactions have a weak electrostatic force, are heavily dependent on the distance to other molecules, and attract neutral molecules. There are multiple types of van der Waals interactions, including hydrogen bonds, which I've already discussed, dipole-dipole interactions, and London dispersed forces, all of which are weak forms of chemical reactions. And here are my peer-reviewed journal articles or citations. Thank you.